The sun was almost gone. The sky looked like a bruised purple grape, and the shadows of the tall trees on campus were stretching out like long, dark fingers. My name is Maya, and I was the last student left at school. I sat at my desk in the empty study hall, the only sound being the ticking of the clock. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Everyone else had gone home hours ago. My teacher, the janitors, even the security guards, all gone. I was staying late to finish my project, but now the silence felt heavy, like a thick blanket over my head. I started packing my bag. My hands were shaking. Just as I reached for my notebook, a loud sound broke the silence. Rustle, rustle, crunch. It came from the pile of dead leaves right outside the window. I froze. Was it a cat, a dog? I looked out, but all I saw were the dark shapes of the bushes. Then the bushes moved again, but there was no wind. Something was out there hiding in the dark. I didn't wait. I grabbed all my books in one big pile, shoved them into my bag, and zipped it up so fast I nearly broke the metal teeth. I slung the bag over my shoulder and walked out of the room. At first I walked slowly, trying to be quiet. But the sound of my own footsteps on the tile floor felt too loud. Clack, clack, clack. I started walking faster. My heart was a drum beating against my ribs. I reached the long hallway that leads to the main exit. Just as I passed the dark trophy case, I felt a cold breeze brush against my ear. It felt like a cold, wet breath. Then I heard it. A soft, dry whisper that sounded like sandpaper rubbing together. Go to room 101. No, I whispered back. My voice felt small. Room 101 was the old basement classroom. It was cold, damp, and smelled like old paper. Nobody used it anymore. I turned my head to run toward the exit, but the hallway seemed to stretch. The front doors looked miles away. I blinked. When I opened my eyes, the world had shifted. I wasn't near the exit anymore. I was standing in the basement hallway. It was dark down here, and the air smelled like wet dirt. I looked at the door directly in front of me. The gold numbers on the wood were peeling. 101. The door was slightly open. Just a small crack about the size of a finger. My legs felt like they were made of jelly. I didn't want to look. Every part of my brain was screaming, "Run!" But my body wouldn't move. It was like the room was a giant magnet, pulling my eyes toward the opening. I leaned in, just an inch. Through the small crack, I saw the classroom. It was filled with old desks stacked on top of each other. But in the middle of the room, something was moving. At first, I thought it was a person. It was tall and wearing a school uniform just like mine. But then it turned around. What I saw made me almost collapse. The student didn't have a face. It was just a smooth white surface where the eyes and mouth should be. But that wasn't the scary part. The scary part was that it was holding a large pair of scissors, and it was cutting something out of a piece of paper. I looked at the floor. The floor was covered in hundreds of paper cutouts. They weren't stars or snowflakes. They were cutouts of me. There was a paper Maya sitting at a desk. A paper Maya walking down the hall. And in the creature's hands, it was finishing a paper Maya that looked exactly like I did right now. Scared, holding a bag, and peeking through a door. The faceless thing stopped cutting. It tilted its head as if it was listening. Then it took the paper version of me and snipped the head off with the scissors. Snip. Suddenly the door flew wide open. The creature wasn't across the room anymore. It was right there, inches from my face. It reached out a hand that felt like cold paper. "You're late for class," 100 voices whispered at once. I didn't think. I turned and ran. I didn't look back. I ran up the stairs, through the halls, and burst through the front doors into the cool night air. I didn't stop until I reached the bright lights of the street. The next day I went to school with my mom. I told the principal what happened. He laughed and said I just had a big imagination. He took me down to the basement to show me that room 101 was empty. He opened the door. The room was dusty and filled with old desks. "See?" he said. "Nothing here." I felt relieved. Maybe I was just tired. But then I looked down at the floor near the back of the room. Tucked under an old chair was a small white scrap of paper. I picked it up. It was a paper cutout of a girl's head. It had my hair, my earrings, and a look of pure terror on its face. On the back of the paper, written in messy black ink, were the words, "See you after school, Maya."